If you're unfamiliar with Ryan Walters, this is him on the left. He has instituted a test that teachers have to pass before they can teach in Oklahoma schools. I want to look at the test, but first let me introduce you to him.
So the student is academically successful.
Talking about a white student is being persecuted in Oklahoma schools. He's the Oklahoma superintendent over all of Oklahoma schools.
Has got an understanding of academics to enter the workforce to have a successful life, but the school is going to force the cultism of wokeism onto this child. Enough is enough. They are trying to trans these kids. They are pushing this indoctrination onto kids. Enough is enough. We have got to fight back against this. Thank God for President Trump. Thank God for school choice. Thank God for parents like these parents that are fighting back against this woke nonsense.
It is one more. I want to play one more soundbite, Nicole, from the father here. Again, we disguised his voice because they just didn't want to be.
Because the white people in Oklahoma are so persecuted, right? Totally.
They want to be identified. Watch this.
The guideline for respecting religious diversity was changed, and it now states that you cannot opt out.
I believe they wanted to opt out of a sex ed class, if I remember correctly, that addresses being gay.
So we felt like we missed the opportunity when it was available to us. They didn't follow through at that time on their own policies that were written in the handbook and give us the opt-out.
Yeah, I don't care who you are. You shouldn't be able to opt out of sex ed class. I was opted out of sex ed class. I didn't have one because I was a Jehovah's Witness and they didn't believe that I should, whatever other stupid nonsense. That is education that every human being in the United States should have. It's important to know. You shouldn't be able to make your kid less intelligent than everybody around them just because you want to. And Ryan Walters is out here parading around protecting this kid when he's not doing anything about this. This really happened in Oklahoma schools. 6 kids spelling out the N-word, holding up little sheets of paper, spelling it out. And what did Ryan Walters do about this? Nothing. He did nothing. He didn't acknowledge it. He didn't, go to the school and talk to anybody. He didn't investigate. He did nothing. But he cares about this poor white student who's being persecuted for being white, right? I think it's clear what kind of person Ryan Walters is. Let's read this article on Hemant Mehta's website, The Friendly Atheist. Oklahoma's meaningless America First teacher test is just a PragerU ad campaign. PragerU wrote this test, this America First test, quote unquote. When your state lies at the bottom of national education rankings, it would make sense to figure out how you can attract better teachers, provide more funding to public schools, and make sure the curriculum is solid in order to help students achieve success in college and beyond. Yeah, Oklahoma, they just did another poll or whatever, a test or statistics, whatever, and found that Oklahoma ranks 49th or 50th out of 50 states in education, depending on which statistic you're looking at. Oklahoma's Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ryan Walters, has done none of those things. His solutions have involved giving public money to private or religious schools and shoving the Bible into as many classes as possible. He's not trying to attract the best teachers either. Dude got a mustache, and I'm sorry, man, this mustache is rough. It's real rough. You got to get rid of that mustache, man. You look more like a pedo now than you did before, and that's saying something. Instead, he announced over the summer that any educators coming to Oklahoma from woke states like New York or California would have to essentially pass an ideology test created by the right-wing propaganda group PragerU. For now, let's set aside the question of why anyone would voluntarily move from New York or California to Oklahoma. The exam, Walters said, would assess teachers' knowledge of things like the Constitution and fundamental biological differences between boys and girls, quote unquote. Why would the state impose any sort of hurdle on otherwise qualified teachers? It seems absurd, especially when the state is suffering from a massive teacher shortage. That's because this isn't actually a test at all. It's an advertising gimmick to promote PragerU. Seriously, this is as much of a test as PragerU is a university, which is to say, it's not. That's part of the scam. This has all been part of a massive publicity stunt to promote right-wing BS under the guise of tough education reform. That's not just me engaging in hyperbole or exaggeration. It literally won't prevent qualified teachers from working in Oklahoma, even if they come from New York or California. One reason I know is because I took the America First questionnaire and aced it, even though I purposely answered everything wrong, because Hemant Mehta was a teacher. On Sunday, PragerU published the entire 34-question list as part of a full-page ad in the New York Times, in addition to another ad on the front page. Being woke is bad, they say, but apparently giving money to a woke newspaper for the sake of attention is good. Can you pass this test? All right, now let me see if I can pull the test up and, blow it up so I can see it clearer. All right, let's see what's on the test here. According to the Supreme Court cases Meyer v. Nebraska, 1923, and Pierce, I think it's actually Pierce v. Society of Sisters, 1925, who has the ultimate right to direct a child's education? The superintendent of schools, the parents, the Board of Education, or the Federal Department of Education? I'm sure that they want the answer to be the parents. What is the fundamental biological distinction between males and females? Height and weight, blood type, personal preference, or chromosomes and reproductive anatomy? How is a child's biological sex typically identified? Parental affirmation of child's preference, personal feelings, visual anatomical observation and chromosomes, or online registration? Jesus Christ, dude. This is a creepy test already. Which chromosome pair determines biological sex in humans? AABB, XXXY, RHAB, or XEXQ? It's so stupid, dude. Oh my God, it's stupid. Why is the distinction between male and female considered important in areas like sports and privacy? For equity in minority communities? To preserve fairness, safety, integrity for both sexes? To increase participation in sports? Or to enhance the self-esteem of transgender children? Should teachers be allowed to express their own political viewpoints in the classroom in order to persuade the students to adopt their point of view? Yes, teachers have freedom of speech too, which does not stop at the classroom door. Wait, that's interesting. That's an interesting question that I wouldn't have expected them to ask. No, once you become a teacher, your freedom of speech in and out of the classroom is restricted. Yes, sometimes when the issue involves civil rights or social justice, or no, the classroom is not an appropriate venue for political activism. That's interesting, because Ryan Walters completely disagrees with that. The answer they're looking for, of course, is D. No, the classroom is not an appropriate venue for political activism. The real answer is yes, sometimes. Teachers cannot push religious agendas specifically in classrooms. Political is a little more complicated because there are political classes like civics and stuff, but teachers can't push religious agendas in classrooms because they're representatives of the state at that moment. It's like members of the military not being allowed to make political statements while wearing their uniforms. Sometimes you do have limits on your speech. When you're acting as a representative of the government, you cannot espouse certain positions or beliefs as that representative. When you leave the classroom, you can say or do whatever you want. Donald Trump has freedom of speech, but if he uses his freedom of speech to direct, the Department of Justice to arrest somebody that he doesn't like or whatever, that's him acting as an agent of the government, and it's no longer Donald Trump doing it, it's president doing it, obviously. But, that nuance is completely lost on people like this.
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
Here's number 7. What did the Supreme Court rule in the 2025 case Mahmoud v. Taylor, or verse Taylor, I suppose? A. Gender-affirming medical procedures are allowed in America. B. Students must recite the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. C. Religious schools must hire non-religious staff. Or D. Public schools cannot require participation in LGBT-themed instruction without a parental opt-out. I'm not actually sure what the answer is to this, but the bottom line is they're trying to propagandize here. It really is just a political ad. Let's just read some of the questions. What are the first 3 words of the U.S. Constitution? In God we trust, we the people, life, liberty, and happiness, or the United States. Why is freedom of religion important to America's identity? What are the 2 parts of the U.S. Congress? How many total U.S. senators are there? Why do some states have more representatives than others? What is the primary responsibility of the president's cabinet? Who signs bills into law? What's the highest court in the U.S.? In the U.S., which of the following is a responsibility reserved only for citizens? And the answers are serve on a jury, own a home, pay taxes, possess a driver's license. Which of the following are explicitly listed in the Bill of Rights? Which right does the Second Amendment protect? What is the supreme law of the United States? Who wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence? Actually, I'm thinking it was John Adams. Let me see. Who wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence? I thought it said Constitution for some reason. I think that would have been Thomas Jefferson then. Yeah, that was Thomas Jefferson. About the Constitution. Wait, it wasn't drafted the same way as the Declaration of Independence. So James Madison was really the key figure with the Constitution. What is the supreme law of the United States? Who wrote the first draft? When was the Declaration of Independence adopted? What was the primary reason the colonists fought the British? Who were the first 3 U.S. presidents? Who is called the father of our country? What did the Emancipation Proclamation do? So the rest pretty much look vanilla, regular, just whatever. They're not like inflammatory. It was the first like 10 questions that were ridiculous and insane and just looking for attention. Who was the president during the Great Depression and World War II? What's the name of the national anthem? Why are there 13 stripes on the American flag? It's because of the 13 colonies, I believe. Which national holiday honors those who died while serving in the U.S. military? Which of the following is a phrase from the Pledge of Allegiance? And from whom does the United States government derive its power? Yeah, it's all regular stuff, except for the beginning. But, seeing this got me to thinking about other political tests. And as it happens, there's a period of time in German history in the 30s when there was a test you had to take to legalize to become a pastor. See, the Protestant church in Germany split in the 30s and was taken over by the Nazis. It was a Nazified version of Christianity called the Deutsche Christen, or the German Christians. And they believed that Jesus was the first Aryan and the first anti-Semite, and there was this eternal struggle between between Semites and Aryans and a bunch of other things like that. And they took over the Protestant church, and pastors had to, quote unquote, legalize by taking the tests again. Like, becoming a pastor is very difficult, actually, in all seriousness. It does require like a lot of education and stuff in hermeneutics and so on and so forth. Got to be educated in like the I am statements in the book of John and all this other complicated stuff. So when the Nazis took over in Germany, when they took over the church, the Protestant church, they made all of the pastors go through their qualification again, their ordinance, to take the test. And it's kind of like a bar exam in that there's a character and fitness aspect to it and all this other stuff. So it was almost like you had to go through a new layer of vetting to be a pastor. Kind of like what we've got here. You got to go through a new layer of vetting to be a teacher in Oklahoma now. Sign up for my Patreon. I'd really appreciate that very much. It would mean so much to me. This is like a really precarious moment in history, in U.S. history, and for me personally. So it would mean a lot if you sign up for my Patreon. Check out cultarchive.org. I did a cult test, basically, where you can see if you're in a cult, and you can look at the historical tests of other groups that already went through this. Also, check out my merch. I have a whole bunch of really cool shirts and stuff. Really interesting. I would really appreciate that. And I don't know if you guys knew about this, but there was, in Louisiana and other states, they had literacy tests that they made people take before they could register to vote, for example, and a number of other things. But the literacy test is unpassable. Just listen to some of these questions. Here's number 1. Draw a line around the number or letter of this sentence. Draw a line around the number or letter of this sentence. Draw a line under the last word in this line. Cross out the longest word in this line. Draw a line around the shortest word in this line. Circle the first letter. And now I'm going to read that again. Circle the first letter of the alphabet in this line. It was written in a confusing way, intentionally confusing way, so that there isn't really a correct answer. There are some answers that are like a little bit more correct, I guess. But at the end of the day, correctness is kind of adjudicated by the test grader, right? And if the person just doesn't want you to pass the test, they're just not going to let you pass the test, since there aren't really any correct answers. These types of politically charged tests have existed throughout history, is my ultimate point here. and they always end badly. They're always used to filter out a minority group that people don't want involved in whatever activity they're gatekeeping. In the space below, draw 3 circles, one inside engulfed by the other. Above the letter X, make a small cross. Draw a line through the letter below that comes earliest in the alphabet. Draw a line through the 2 letters below that come last in the alphabet. In the first circle below, write the last letter of the first word beginning with L. What the f does that even mean? What does that even mean? Okay, so just for the audio audience, we have 5 circles right next to each other in a line. In the first circle below, write the last letter of the first word beginning with L. I mean, really, think about that. How would one answer that? I have no clue how I would answer that. That doesn't make any sense. It was written like that on purpose. Cross out the number necessary when making the number below 1 million. Draw a line from circle 2 to circle 5 that will pass below circle 2 and above circle 4. So does that mean you like start outside of the 1 or outside of the 2 and then circle around like the 4 and then under the 5? Does that mean you start in the center of circle 2 and then go around? Like, what does that mean? In the line below, cross out each number that is more than 20 but less than 30. And we got a series of numbers, 31, 16, 48, 29, 53. It's completely unpassable, is the point. When we start gatekeeping with political agendas, it ends badly. That's my point. When we gatekeep with political agendas, it ends badly. And that is exactly what this PragerU test is. And they can say, oh, the answers are so simple. They're not really simple because the answers that they're giving aren't exactly correct. A lot of these answers are not exactly right. And they can very easily filter people out through the subjectivity of the test grader. That's the bottom line here. They're scumbags. And this is a really bad road to go down. Anyway, tell me what you think in the comments.